Hello and welcome to episode 231 of the Ideal Nutrition Podcast. My name is Aidan Muir and I'm here with my co-host Torwen Eerkens, and this is another Q&A episode. And I was always thinking from the start that I didn't think we'd get into 11 Q&As deep, which is what we're into now. But I am a man of the people and I've been looking at the stats and these episodes tend to get a decent amount of downloads. So let's keep doing them. So we're going to start off, we're just going to go back and forth with some questions. But the first question I've got for you, Torwen, is what do you recommend if you are, and this is somebody asking obviously, what do you recommend if you're always food focused, thinking of it, craving it, tracking it?
I'm going to start off with saying if you are constantly thinking about food or craving it, it is super likely that you're not eating enough. So things that can contribute to this consistently thinking of food and tracking and wanting to know how much you're having are restrictive food rules. So telling yourself that you can't have certain things, which then makes you want them more. It could be that your meals are actually not built to be satisfying or keep you full, so poor balance of protein, fats and carbs. Maybe you're relying on food to navigate things like emotions, or like I mentioned, you're just generally not eating enough calories. So I wanted to touch on the two different types of pathways as well that we talk about when we're thinking of food or focusing on food. And different types of craving. So in terms of homeostatic pathway, that's your body telling you that you actually need more food, so more energy from food, which can be triggered by your body's energy balance, which then releases hunger hormones. On the other aspect, we have the hedonic pathway, which is often triggered by your environment. So thoughts around food, emotions, stress, wanting the taste of a certain food, often yummier ones. And I think that's important to kind of split up so that you can understand what kind of cravings or food focus you have. A few things to focus on though are making sure that you eat enough, so increasing meal size or how often you're eating, aiming for 3 meals, 2 to 3 snacks, building balanced meals that include adequate protein, healthy fats, complex carbs to really help with that satiety, including some flexibility around food choices to help challenge that restriction, and maybe mindfully including the foods that you tell yourself that you can't have, managing stress other ways than food, so redirecting those emotions, and then potentially prioritizing sleep, which can also disrupt hunger hormones.
That covers pretty much everything I can think of. Another one, I don't know if you ever talk about this with clients, is if somebody's like entire Instagram and TikTok feed is food as well, I would sometimes get them to change their algorithm. And it, like, this is like one of the lowest priorities thing. I think everything else you've just said like matters so much more, but also getting them to potentially like see fewer like these, like clicking that button where it's like you click the top right corner and you say see fewer of this type of content. Like, it's something that I'd recommend because there are some people I've just like seen them scrolling and it's like every single post is nice tasting food. It's like, well, I'd think about food more if that's what I was seeing too.
In the same sense, if you're following people who have disordered eating patterns or are telling you to track certain things and you don't think that that's the best thing for you, unfollow them as well. Like, it doesn't just have to be seeing food. It can also be creators who are pushing that sort of thoughts on you as well.
Yeah, I agree for sure. Even obviously my content's different and it's just nutrition, but I do get a decent amount of unfollows and my growth rate is just higher than the unfollow rate. And I don't think about it too deeply. I'm like, I think there's somebody who was just quite into nutrition when they followed me. And then one day they looked up and they're like, I don't want to see all this content all the time. I'm like, fair enough. And I do think it is, I'm not super big on like curating your algorithm, but I do think you should take steps to make it aligned with your values and what you're trying to achieve as well.
Cool. I'm going to ask Aidan then. Aidan, is collagen worth the money and investment?
I think it's tricky because it depends on, let's say, 3 main things. One is how much money you have. If you have heaps and heaps of money, then it's obviously a much smaller percentage of your total amount. If you don't have much money, I'm probably just going to straight up say no. But obviously it's somewhere in between. The second one is how much you care about the specific benefits that you would get from it. For example, if somebody was fanatical about skin health and had decent money, like, I'm like, well, maybe it is probably worth it. Like, it's not massively moving the needle, but it does, like, the research is slightly positive on it. If somebody is trying to be an elite athlete and or they really care about like injury management and they have a tendon injury, for example, I think it's worth doing that. Even if somebody's not an elite athlete, but they're just having a proper crack at it and they really like care about this stuff, I think that can potentially make sense. And then the third thing is how much kind of capacity you have for that. I don't know if that's the right phrasing I want to go with, but in terms of is it a burden to add it in as well? Like if you're taking 15 different supplements and then you add another one in, that's probably more of a burden than just adding one supplement in if you're not currently taking any. Whether that's just from obviously the financial perspective, but also from the fact that each additional thing you take is a little bit more annoying as well.
And a little bit more expensive. I 100% agree with you there in terms of if you have the money and maybe you have specific goals for improving either skin health or you have a reason for a tendon injury or something like that, then yes, it may be worth it. Otherwise, maybe it's not the first thing that you look to.
Somebody asked, weight loss plateau, how to overcome?
There's a few things to consider here because it's not usually just one thing that contributes. So firstly, I'd always urge you to consider, are you still in an active deficit? Are you counting the little things like the sauces, the drinks, little snacks that might have crept up? And is it worth tracking again, maybe for a period of time to see where your intake actually is at and just be honest with yourself, like, am I still eating in a deficit? That's one thing to consider. If you've done this and you're like, actually, you know what, I feel like I am still in deficit, I've lost a fair bit of weight, are you still eating at the initial deficit that you've set? Do you need to reassess this number? Because theoretically, like, as you lose weight, the deficit becomes smaller. And this is because the lighter you are, the less energy you burn just existing, you could say. So metabolic adaptation may also play like a little role in this. The longer you are in a deficit, the longer your body does downregulate some processes that use energy. So that's some things to consider. Tips then maybe are, tighten things up again, potentially track for a period of time, as I said. Maybe it is time to take a diet break. So returning to maintenance for a period of time for a few weeks will help give that physiological reset. It will also help mentally, reducing food cravings, the food thoughts, and it might make it easier to stick to a deficit longer term. And then, having a look, do you need to adjust that calorie target? Would it be better for you maybe to do a smaller calorie deficit if it's something that you're going to stick to more consistently? Or are you someone who prefers to do it maybe a little bit more aggressively so that you can get the weight loss ball rolling?
I don't think I've got heaps to add there. One thing that I will add is also assess how long it's been. Every now and then, some people have made like incredible progress over a 4 to 6 week period, and there might be 1 week where they've quote unquote hit a plateau. And it's like, maybe that was just random weight fluctuation up, but like the work you've been doing is working great. So time as well. Cool.
Aidan, do you think, does tart cherry juice extract give the same sleep and soreness benefits as juice? And if so, at what dosage?
Simple one. So the research is very positive on this. It seems to be just as effective. And the dosage is a 500 to 1,000 milligram dosage of tart cherry extract. There's heaps of products that fit that. I like that because it could be more cost effective, could be easy to take. And it also means if anyone happened to be concerned about the sugar content, as in they're just happy with the diet overall and they just don't want to add that in, for example, you can get around that with tart cherry extract.
Yeah, I don't have much to add there.
Is it worth tracking to make sure I am eating enough?
I actually recently had this conversation with one of my clients and I'm actually in two minds here. So I want to give you both sides of my thoughts. Firstly, if you don't have a bad relationship with food and you can honestly say that, and you generally do just want to know, are you fueling properly? Then yes, I think maybe having some sort of idea of what portions you should be eating or how much protein is in a serve or roughly the amount of carbs that you're getting at each meal can be helpful. And I'll preface that by saying that even tracking for a few days will give you an idea of that. So it might not be something that you need to do longer term. If you're someone who becomes obsessed with things easily or you're very focused on numbers, then it might actually do more harm than good. And I would say instead, let's focus on building consistent meal patterns. Could, just looking at a meal plan that doesn't contain numbers or no need to track be a better option for you?
I love the idea of factoring in both of those things, where there's some people who it's like a bit of a risk or it is a risk, and there's other people who it's not. I often think if somebody's made it to, let's say, 25 years old and they've never tracked and they've never shown much interest in any of these type of things, I do think it's often lower risk to do this, particularly if they don't have signs of being obsessive with other things as well. Something that I often point out is that almost everybody I've ever had track has learned something useful. And the big question is, is that worth the risk? And obviously that's case by case, but particularly if somebody's looking at it through the lens of, is it worth tracking to make sure I'm eating enough? I think the risk is lower in a lot of cases too.
Just wanted to add something on there because eating enough, what is the number that you're striving for? Where did you pull that number from? Is it something that you're comparing to someone else that you've seen? Or are you actually basing it on your own requirements? Because I think that, again, makes a big difference into what you're striving to achieve there. Okay, Aidan, another question. Your thoughts on extended fasting, so between 24 and 36 hours for fat loss instead of a regular calorie deficit?
I think it is almost guaranteed to be harder in a lot of cases. I don't think it's the easiest way of doing things. And I'm going to add a little bit of context onto that. So the first thing is that a kilo of body fat is made up of around 7,700 calories. I think that is a really important piece of information for this. if you fasted for, say, 24 hours, let's just use that to keep the numbers really simple, it's almost the equivalent of your maintenance calories being taken away from that 7,700. Adding a bit more onto that. Let's say somebody's maintenance calories are normally 2,500 for the sake of this example. Theoretically, that's like a third of a kilo of body fat. If 100% of that loss came from body fat, you might see way more loss on the scale because you have no food coming in. Your food weight in your stomach is decreasing, your glycogen is decreasing, your water weight is decreasing. You might lose 2+ kilos on the scale, but only like a third of a kilo of body fat. This stuff can happen slowly over time, and I think it's just easier to just be in a consistent deficit. I do have another note I want to add on to this though. Let's say your maintenance calories are normally 2,500. The thermic effect of food, the calories involved in eating and digesting food, like usually that takes up about 10% of your maintenance calories. So you've already lost some calories just through that. Your energy expenditure is decreased. If you're fully fasting, you're probably not training hard during that period, most likely. Your kind of general movement is probably decreasing. Your total daily energy expenditure drops a little bit during this, which even decreases that fat loss even down more. And I do see some logic for some people in very rare situations where, like, I've seen some people have success on, say, the 5-2 diet, where they mostly fast, like, say, 2 days of the week, which makes this a bit of a larger kind of impact because it's now 2 days instead of, say, 1. I just think for almost everybody it's going to be easier. And let's add some thoughts as to why I think it's going to be easier if they're going to do like a more moderate calorie deficit more consistently. One, most people have jobs and they want to be able to function. Some people can fast and still function quite well. A lot of people struggle. A lot of people have social situations. This is one of the trickiest ones. Is if you're living a normal life and then you just randomly fast. Like if you have a family and you normally have dinner together, suddenly it's a bit of an interruption in some ways. I'm conscious of that being like there is many people who successfully will do this and it's no issue, but I just want to put it out there that in a lot of cases this is more difficult than the alternative.
I haven't got much to add there. I think, like you say, it's probably not something you'd go out of your way to recommend. You'd support someone doing a pretty moderate deficit across a longer period of time, potentially.
The next question is, do you recommend having anything during Hyrox? I think the original question said gels. I suppose this would also extend to like drinks and stuff as well.
Yeah, it's a pretty good question. I think it's pretty relevant. Most people probably don't know exactly. It's that kind of, a Hyrox typically does take 60 to 90 minutes, which is a bit of an awkward time frame because it is the duration where we do recommend to start intra-fueling and topping up glucose. But to what extent and what do we recommend? So I definitely think topping up energy throughout can help sustain performance, especially at that higher energy output. There's a few things we could consider here. So you could definitely consider just having some sports drinks at each of the stations, or you could consider mouth rinsing even, which we know is pretty beneficial between that 45 to 75 minutes of pretty intense exercise where you swish the carbs around your mouth for 5 to 10 seconds before you spit it out. The carb receptors in your mouth then send a message to your brain that you will be receiving energy, which reduces the perceived fatigue and helps to maintain energy output. Because you're not actually swallowing the food though, it's a neurological response, so you're not actually getting the energy. It's an option and it's something that works well for some people. I thought I'd just put it out there. But otherwise, my recommendation would be to have one small energy gel, probably while you're rowing or on the run, but making sure that you've practiced this during training.
Yeah, exactly right. I'd say that aligns exactly with my thoughts, and doing like either a full carb load or a mini carb load leading into it as well would be a great idea.
Amazing. Is it best to take creatine before a workout or any time?
Taking it at any time is the move, just being consistent with it, taking it daily. One of the reasons I also encourage not linking it to the workout is I just find a lot of people, if they link it with their workout, they only take it on training days. And this is something that builds up in your system over time. You want to be having it consistently. I will add a caveat that technically, if you look at the research, it leans slightly in favor of people having it around their workout, whether before or after or both, even when looking at strength gains or also in terms of creatine uptake. And there's reasons for it. I personally think that's a little bit misleading. And one of the reasons why I think it's misleading is if you take creatine consistently for long enough, you reach the saturation point and it just does not matter. If you just keep taking consistently at any time, you will very, 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 very likely get the exact same outcomes. It's just in short-term studies, you might see differences. And some of these things could be that creatine absorption might be slightly higher post-workout, which therefore means in these short-term studies, they reach that saturation point a little bit quicker if they do this. Either way, I wouldn't think about it too deeply. I would just take it consistently.
I agree with that. Anything else that you wanted to add, Aidan?
Do we do any of the other questions, do you reckon?
I'm happy to leave it at those ones.
Okay, well, we will leave it at those ones.
We'll save them for next time.
Yeah, we'll save it for next time. Anyway, as always, I'll check the download numbers on this. I'll see if people are still interested in this. If they are, we'll keep doing them. And if not, let me know. Anyway, well, thank you so much for listening. And as always, if you could please leave a rating and review, we would massively appreciate that.